Welcome to a special edition of the Husker Fans of Montana podcast. I'm Ricky J, and on the phone with me are Jeff, Nate, and Jack. They're on their way to Boulder, Colorado to watch our beloved Nebraska Huskers take on the Colorado Buffaloes. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Good. We're probably about 50% here. We're about just west of Kearney, Nebraska.
Nice. It's been a while since I've made that drive, but I know it hasn't gotten any shorter since then. How many total hours is it roughly?
I think we're looking from our doorstep to our hotels just a little over 7.
Nice. And I know you guys are in Omaha. Did you get a decent hotel? Are they about sold out? I know this game has suddenly become, kind of insane for the nation. How'd you guys get set up?
Yeah, I think I got lucky. I got it pretty early. We're on the northwest edge of Denver, so we're only about 30 minutes from the hotel to Folsom Field.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. An early morning, pretty early morning game anyway. Seems early for me, a retired guy. So I don't know how that's going to be for you guys. But a 10 a.m. start time. What do you figure? You get to the stadium about an hour before?
Yeah, that's probably what we're thinking.
Cool. Well, Jeff, like me, you're a seasoned fan with memories of Husker greatness. And Nate, you're a current student at UNL, and Jack, you're a current high school student in Nebraska. So we've kind of got 3 different perspectives across the age group. So I guess I'll ask each of these, but I'll start with Jeff. What are your thoughts on last week's loss to Minnesota?
Definitely a tough one. Obvious improvements in the trenches. However, just not being able to rid ourselves of the mistakes, both whether it's player or maybe what I felt was a couple of coaching errors maybe that would help that team push over the hump in those close games.
Right. I agree with you. When Coach Rule had been talking about those last 5 minutes and showing up in the last 5 minutes and those being the most important, it was unfortunate what happened in the last 5 minutes of that game.
Yeah, and I took, as we sat and watched it, right before halftime, we were screaming out to take a timeout, get those kids settled down, and I get a little bit of that strategy of getting up to the line quick, but maybe it was so important to get those points before half that
yes.
Maybe take a second, calm everybody down. You're on the 1 foot line. Sims, for all that he is, he's a big dude and could have easily scored, I think. From that
I think so. And he can also could handle a running back pushing him from behind. So I think that was that was definitely going to be a score had they not false started.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just
go ahead.
Just the Anthony Grant. I mean, that decision. They obviously made his coaches, but it sure seemed on the outside like a weird one.
I agree to have pointed that out and then still had him in. At that moment of the game, I mean, obviously the coaches have a lot more information than we do, and they're ultimately responsible for their decisions. But it just seems like it set it up for the worst thing that could happen, and it did.
Right.
So, Nate, tell us a little about you're a senior at UNL, and you're living close to campus. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I live probably about 8 to 10 minutes outside of campus. Yeah, I'm going into my senior year right now.
Nice. And if you want to share, what's your major?
Majoring in finance right now.
I like it. Get graduated, I'll be sending you some of my retirement fund and try to make me some money, will you?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can make that happen.
Awesome. Hey, what are your thoughts on last week's loss to Minnesota?
I thought it looked a lot like the team from previous years. I think it's going to be pretty hard for the team to shake kind of the tendencies and just kind of the play from previous years of the Frost era. But I don't think it's the end of the world. Coach Rule has taken a long time to rebuild his teams. And I know a lot of people are freaking out because of how similar the team looks. But I don't think it's going to be the end of the world.
Right. I agree. I think, Coach Rule has his way of doing things, and it may not be as, in comparison as fast or as flashy looking as what's happening in Colorado right now. But I do have faith in him and I think he has a plan. Don't you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit easier to see than when Frost was here. Build the trenches, play good defense, control the ball. They weren't able to execute last week, but I think the vision is there, and it looks at least a little bit better than what it was years past.
Gotcha. Well, Jack, you're the youngest of us here, younger than me by far, for sure. And you're a Curtin High School student. Which grade?
11th grade.
11th grade. So you're right in the meat of it.
Yeah.
So what's your earliest memories of Nebraska football? Like, how far back can you even remember Husker football?
Probably around Oakley era was the earliest I can remember.
Okay. So yeah, it's anything that you've your dad's talked about has basically you've been watching it on old low res replays on television, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had some good years there, I'll tell you that, and hopefully they're going to be coming back. But what are your thoughts on last week's loss to Minnesota?
To me, it kind of seemed like the same old thing I've been watching the last 16 years of my life. I was praying for a change when Coach Rule came in. I saw a little bit of that, but not a whole lot last week.
Right. I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, they keep talking about that with all the new players and obviously the new staff. This is their first loss, but they do have to have an appreciation for the fan base that's been suffering through this for several years. All right. Well, Jeff, I'm going to bring it back to you. Now, we're facing a Colorado team that's hotter than they were a week ago, that's for sure. And what are your thoughts on Colorado's win at TCU last week?
I definitely checked it out. I definitely impressed with their skilled players. I mean, it's been talked about ad nauseum for the last week. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of the stuff that I had been reading prior to about them being small and stuff like that didn't really seem to factor in. I teetered on it a little bit. I mean, there are a lot of predictions where, they would be a 3-win team, stuff like that. And yeah, they pulled off that victory, but we've seen crazy things happen too. I mean, years ago, Appalachian State beat Michigan. I mean, it's not that a team, maybe a team that, 8 out of 10 times loses that game. TCU left, a ton of points, 2 picks in the red zone and a missed field goal. So, I mean, at flash, when you first see it, you think, oh my God. But then it's like, when you slow it down and break it down a little bit, I mean, TCU put up almost 600 yards of offense, almost 300 yards of rushing. So I definitely will say that I was impressed. Colorado's definitely better, or their skill players are definitely better than what I anticipated. So it'll be fun to see them this weekend to see how they follow that up.
I agree, and this is certainly is set up now as a huge opportunity for Nebraska, where if Colorado hadn't done well, I mean, there wouldn't be very much interest in this game, and Nebraska wouldn't be playing in much of a crowd, and they'd be expected to win. Now they go into Boulder, probably going to be the most viewed game this week of any college football game, with incredible national interest, and it's a national storyline. And Nebraska has an opportunity to go in there and play some Big Ten style, old Nebraska style football, and hit some people. And I hope they can take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on Rule. I believe he's a super smart guy. He's very detail oriented. So I'm just cautiously optimistic that they'll put a game plan together that Nebraska will go out there tomorrow. You know, win or lose, who knows, but at least get in there and play a football game that we can be proud of. And like you said, it'd be national. All these national people will be able to see Nebraska just as much as Colorado.
Right, I agree. Well, hey Nate, what are your thoughts especially as a student that's probably been hearing this on campus all week? What are your thoughts on Colorado's win at TCU?
I was definitely surprised by it. They definitely showed things that proved that they weren't the worst roster in college football, kind of like some people had been thrown out there. But I don't think they deserved that the ranking that they got. I don't think they're a top 25 team, or at least they haven't proved it to us quite yet. Kind of bouncing off what he said, week one's pretty crazy. People they don't really have game plans set for specific teams. There's a lot of new players, new coaching staff, new schemes, and it's specifically with Colorado, they had a bunch of new players, new coaches. TCU didn't really know what to expect. On top of that, they lost a lot of talent to the NFL this past season. So it was a good win, but I'm not as big on the hype train as some of the national media is. And as far as Nebraska goes, I think it's a great thing for them that Colorado got the win, because I think from a national perspective, they have nothing to lose, because Colorado is being hyped up. Everybody thinks the world of them. And I think really the only thing Nebraska has to lose is from a local perspective, if you will, or maybe like a fan base perspective.
Right.
So hopefully they go out there and they're at least competitive, so that the national media can give us some respect too.
I agree wholeheartedly. I certainly hope and pray that they are competitive and at a minimum put on a good game. Now, Jack, is there any buzz around the high school in Omaha, or are people paying much attention?
There's not a whole lot. The only real buzz is that everyone thinks it's not going to be a game between Nebraska and Colorado, but I don't really agree with that at all. I think if we play our best, then I think we definitely stand a fair shot.
No, I agree. So there's a lot of just people buying into the hype that Colorado's going to take it to Nebraska?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's certainly, the talking heads, it's trending that way nationally. So, but that's why they play the game, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, Jeff, what do you think the keys are to a Nebraska victory? What does Nebraska have to do to go into Boulder? It's going to be an incredibly hostile crowd. They're more fired up than they've been in probably since the 90s. And what do you think the keys? What does Nebraska got to do to win?
Protect the football, number one. I mean, we can't have interception in the end zone, in the red zone stuff. I think, too, almost like the old days where sometimes, like in the old days, Miami jumped up on us or Florida State would jump up on us. But sticking with it, not freaking out about it. If Colorado hits a couple big plays and we're down early, like just staying with the process. And I think I think Sims is like probably the key thing here, that he's got to be on point with his passes, and if he's on and the running game can do it, I think we're going to win the trenches. I'm not really worried about that too much. But I think it comes down to Sims and then protecting the football.
Yeah, I think protecting the football, I agree with you 100%. And certainly it starts with protecting that football and not giving away free opportunities or taking away opportunities from ourselves. Nate, what are you thinking are the keys to a Nebraska victory in Boulder? What do you want to see?
I agree with a lot of what he just said. I think a couple other things are limiting the big plays on defense, which I think they did a good job of against Minnesota, but against these playmakers with Colorado, I think it's going to be big to really limit the big plays and not put up chunk plays where they score 7 points in a 30-second drive.
Right.
Or if they're stopping them consistently, but they're letting up big plays and letting them kind of hang with our offense. And then the other thing would be the run game, and then at least have an efficient passing game, because last weekend was not great for our passing game. And hopefully, I have confidence in our trenches, so I hope the run game can be established, and then, like I said, the efficient passing game.
No, that makes sense. I agree. We've got to get that run game going, and we certainly have to throw better, or we're going to have a long day. But Jack, what are your thoughts? You've heard the first two. What do you think, and what do you want to see in Boulder from Nebraska?
Definitely want to see less penalties that end up costing us a drive, and then just taking care of that football in crucial moments.
Yeah, again, I agree wholeheartedly. So before we going to ask you for your final game predictions, but before we go to that, I'll just ask you for kind of any thoughts that you have on any of this. Jeff, go ahead.
I don't know. For me, I mean, I'm excited to see him. But I'm not just with the Colorado game, but with this coaching staff and stuff. I've kind of set my sights on like the Illinois game, and starting some judgments from there. Like I said in the earlier part about that not calling a timeout and slowing things down before half. Like trying to keep. Frost was such a disaster, and like I fell for it. I had my hopes up so high for him that I'm trying to give them some grace to get their feet underneath them. Expecting a few errors like that. But I'm hoping by seeing progress each week, that by like Illinois, we're really starting to see somewhat of a team that we do think can get to a bowl or is going to compete with the Wisconsin and the Iowa and stuff this season. But I am really pumped up. I think this is a fun game. I'm glad we're getting to go to where game number 2 for both these new coaches at both these universities, and I'm just hoping that the outcome is decent.
Well, it is going to be an awesome environment for you guys to experience, for sure. Nate, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm glad that Colorado had the week that they had last week, so we can get some even more excitement for this game that most of us were already excited for. I'm a little bit worried about our offense, so that's kind of the thing that I'm going to be looking for in this game. Yeah, I hope we play competitive and we don't embarrass ourselves for the national media.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, that it seems like the worst has been happening to Nebraska every time. Like whatever our fear is, that worst fear, it seems to come true. So I hope that that's not the case this Saturday. You know, there's been some storyline out there that at least Colorado feels like, I think it was 2001 when we lost out there, that was the beginning of that marked the decline of Nebraska football as far as any sort of national relevance. And, fingers crossed that the eyes of the nation are on this game. Maybe this will come to mark the beginning of the return of Nebraska football to national relevance. Jack, give us your final thoughts.
I'm definitely excited for this game. Probably be one of the bigger games I've ever watched coming out of Nebraska. But I hope we just keep it close. Even if we end up losing, if it's a close game, I'll be happy with the outcome.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's definitely like that bottom floor thing that all Nebraska fans are hoping for. Just we all want to win, but definitely, have a good fight, get a good battle, good game.
Yeah.
So obviously the podcast, we're here in Montana, Helena, Montana, which is built on a mining tradition. So we kind of stick with that when we give our predictions. And so we call it, is it real gold or fool's gold that the Huskers are going to win, in Colorado this Saturday? So, Jeff, what are your final game predictions?
Well, I'm going to go with, I believe it's real gold. And if I'm going to put a number to it, I honestly think that I could easily see a 31-28, 31-24 game in favor of Nebraska.
I love it, and I'm hoping for that too. Nate, what are your final game predictions?
I'm also going to go with real gold. I'll go with a 28-24 final score.
I like that too. All right, Jack, what are your final game predictions?
I'm going to go with real gold as well, and I'm going to guess 28-24 as well, I think.
28-24. All right, good scores on the podcast that's just out now, just published on YouTube and on Spotify. If you're bored and you guys want to fall asleep, but Jeff, if you're driving, don't fall asleep. It will. I just lost a little hope, but I'll. So my predictions. I made a prediction just kind of based on what evidence I have to date, and like you, Jeff, I expressed. I'm certainly a Coach Rule supporter and the staff, and I like the things I've heard. There are a couple things though that I question, but I think the more games we play, the more information we'll get, and I do believe we're going to see at a minimum incremental growth, and later in the season we're going to potentially be happier than we are hopefully after week one, and next year is even going to be better, and I think he's going to have us on the road to getting back in the winner circle for sure. Well, I tell you guys to have a great trip. Be safe. I think it's smart you took the rental car. The last game that I was at in Boulder, and I've gone to a few of them, was in the 90s, and in the student section, it was a fairly hostile crowd, and took all of my verbal judo to stay in one piece. But it was an interesting crowd. I think you'll see a fired up crowd. Hopefully you'll see a lot of Husker fans out there. I-80 is probably packed with cars heading west. And I certainly wish you guys a safe and happy, fun time. And go Huskers.
That's right. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Be red.